Hello, everyone. Thank you for logging in and joining this webinar. My name is Glenn Cricket. I'm with the World Environment Center. I'm the interim president and CEO, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this webinar on developing future leaders through nonprofit board and community service. And I'm joined here today by some fabulous co-sponsors of the webinar and tremendous panelists. So I'm just going to open this up with some quick thank yous and introductions. As I mentioned, I'm with the World Environment Center, where we're one of the partners delivering this webinar. Our mission is to advance sustainable development through the business practices of our member companies in partnership with governments and multilateral organizations and nonprofit organizations. And I can't think of a better way we advance that mission than helping corporate executives serve nonprofits and helping nonprofits educate those companies through that volunteer service. So this is a great topic for our organizations. I want to thank our fellow sponsors of this webinar, Peshera Global, represented here by Gavin Sepulak, and the Environmental Law Institute, and also Alice Korngold, who's on the line as one of our moderators. We've all put this together among our organizations, and we have some terrific companies, Dow, Target, FedEx, and 3M. Alice and Gavin will introduce the leaders from those companies, but I want to thank them as well for joining us. Just a further word about the topic from my perspective. I've worked for many great nonprofit organizations over my career, and in every case we've had very generous corporate executives, public-minded corporate executives sitting on our boards of directors, volunteering in our field activities. And I've seen firsthand the value that provides to nonprofits to allow us to do our job better and to serve our communities better. But we're also really beginning to see the value that flows back the other way. And I think some of our panelists will probably talk about that. And at a time when we're all trying to advance things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals or goals for addressing global issues like climate change, we know that we need partnerships between nonprofit organizations and corporates and government. And volunteer service from one sector to another is a great way to advance that partnership. And just yesterday here in the United States, we saw the Business Roundtable revise its position to say that companies aren't just existing to serve their shareholders, they exist to serve society. And what better way for companies to learn the skills and the mindsets they need to make that shift than to get involved in nonprofits and learn those skills and mindsets firsthand from organizations who've always believed that that is their purpose. So I'm excited to learn from our panelists today. I hope everyone out there will be thinking about questions to ask. You'll have an opportunity to do that. So now I want to turn the program over for the first panel to Alice Korngold.
Thank you, Glenn. We're excited about doing this. We've been planning it for a while and had amazing discussions in preparing. And thank you also to the World Environment Center, Peshera Global, and the Environmental Law Institute for sponsoring this, and for our company folks for participating. On my panel is Mary Draves, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Dow. Just momentarily, we'll be Tracy Burton. Is that Tracy trying to get in? Some technical issues. Tracy Burton, who's the Senior Director for Corporate Social Responsibility with Target. I'm glad you brought up, Glenn, about the Business Roundtable, 192 CEOs signing off, saying it's not just about shareholder interest and value, but all stakeholders, and employees, communities, customers, and there really isn't a dichotomy if you want to grow shareholder value. The question is, how do you develop business people to lead in this era of sustainability? And for our panel, we'll talk about the value of nonprofit board service for those purposes. Let me open by saying that what the catalyst for this is that 2.5 years ago, Dow, Target, and several other companies participated in the nonprofit board leadership study. Couple thousand employees responded to a survey, to interviews, and we were looking for evidence. Is it so that nonprofit boards help develop leaders for sustainability? And we saw powerful evidence that employees develop as leaders, including that within 1 or 2 years, 53% move into board leadership positions, and then even more after those first couple of years. We also saw the value in terms of advancing diversity and inclusion and empathy, in that employees said they serve on boards with people from very different backgrounds and perspectives, gives them an appreciation for people with different backgrounds and perspectives, and they even bring that new appreciation back to work by listening more thoughtfully to other people, forming more inclusive teams and committees, and even hiring and promoting more inclusively, and that it was affected their empathy. And finally, in terms of sustainability, we were able to see how much nonprofit board service advances the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Let me also comment that employees said for companies that support or encourage, promote their nonprofit board involvement, they appreciated that, and it was a reason to work at a company and to stay at a company. So now I will turn to Mary. We'll have a conversation with Mary and with Tracy when she joins us. Let me ask Mary, we've had some long, wonderful conversations about this over the past couple of years. You've served on many nonprofit boards. What's your personal experience in terms of the value of nonprofit board service?
So Alice, thanks very much for having me here today. And we've had a lot of discussions about nonprofit board service and really what that has meant to me personally and professionally. And I will just maybe tell you a quick story. I started really getting into nonprofit board service it's been over a decade ago. A supervisor of mine came to me and he said, there's an opportunity on a board of a family center. So, a center that really provides a wide variety of services to people. And he said, and they need some people on the board, and I've already volunteered you. And I said, oh, wonderful. So I started on this board. I ended up serving 9 years, which is the maximum that you can serve on that board. It was a center, a family center that was in an area where I grew up. So it was, kind of in my backyard. I didn't really know a lot about it until I started serving on the board. But what I found was, here in the middle of Midland, Michigan, that's where I'm located, was a group of people that were fantastically committed to the betterment of our community in so many different ways. They focused on really the everyday needs of people. Things that maybe a lot of us take for granted, like adequate food and adequate shelter, heating assistance, childcare, after-school programs, and really a place for seniors to gather for meals and for social time. So, it was an interesting experience to get started. You mentioned diversity, and you mentioned the idea of learning. So you go on a board and you really don't know what to expect, but what I learned very quickly that it wasn't like working at a Fortune 50 company. It was very different. The things that we did were very different. Decisions were made a bit differently, and you had to learn patience. You had to learn how to listen. You really had to learn and understand that the people on the board may all come from very different backgrounds, like that we do at our office in our work settings. But they may have, different skill sets, and how could you contribute to that? So I also learned quite quickly that each of us on the board brought with us some skill that we needed to provide to the board. And in this particular case, maybe it was that we understood strategy, or that we understood finances, or that, as you had pointed out, we had a long history in sustainability. How can we help that organization become more sustainable? But the one thing we also learned is that action needed to happen, and it needed to happen immediately. So for me, it was about really understanding, are you on a board just to show up once a month and say you've done that, or were you on a board to really get actively engaged? So the other thing that I found was really tremendous for me is professionally, how does passion drive people? How does passion and interest drive people? And it was a great experience to be with the folks on this board, because they wanted to help the community and they wanted to help the people in the community. And they did everything that they possibly could. And it wasn't a kind of, like I said, a once a month thing, but it was, just every day. It was every week, almost sometimes every day. The experiences that I brought from that board have made a huge difference in how I operate at Dow. How do you approach collaboration? You mentioned empathy. How do you approach empathy in your role? How do you approach listening? All of these things were very different after a few years of service on the board, and it has really, kind of catapulted me into wanting to do more professionally and, personally and professionally on topics I have passions about. For me, it's really about advancing youth and making sure that, we have a strong conservation agenda in our communities. So I really enjoyed it, and I have continued to find board service personally very motivating for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And we are expecting Tracy Burton from Target.
Hi, Alice. I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
hi
here.
there. Okay. I'm sorry we can't see you, but we're thrilled that you've joined us. This is Tracy Burton, Senior Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Target. And Tracy, I know that empathy is important to your company, and so is nonprofit board service. How do you see the two connected?
I see the two connected because board service has been a really great way for our team members to have an immersive experience to learn about diverse teams, and so you can engage your team in a more productive way. It has also been important because we are a retailer and we serve a number of different diverse guest segments to understand more about our different guest segments. And it has also been helpful in helping those leaders grow personally. It can be a transformative experience to go on a board and to understand a community in a different way, up and close and personal. So in addition to those ways, it's just another great way to give back to the community. So we've just found the overall immersive experience nature of board experience as a great element to help grow and develop our team personally and professionally.
Thank you.
Panelists. Sorry, if all the panelists can please mute their phones. Someone's phone is going off. Thank you.
Okay. Will do. I'll double check that it's mine. Okay, thank you. And Tracy, thank you for joining in on that. And I'm sure for folks at Target to understand employee interests and the value that they gain from nonprofit board service, that makes so much sense. One of you or Mary, mentioned to me also that employees work for managers, and managers who are more empathic, who understand their needs and interests, are more effective. Would one of you like to address that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a few comments, and then Tracy, you definitely, I'm sure, have much to add on this too. I will say that when we as leaders can connect with the interests of those that work with us, there becomes a different bond. I do a lot in food issues where people are not available or they don't have enough to eat, and it's really interesting when you start explaining to people things like food deserts through your nonprofit work, or this idea that there are people in our community that don't have enough to eat through our nonprofit work, how their connection with you changes, and then how do we get involved with one another, because it's a common platform of people shouldn't be hungry in the United States of America. So for me, it's been really a great way to engage with people on a very different and a very personal level. And we find that when that happens, the connection from an achievement perspective really can improve across the board, both here at work and then outside of work. And Tracy, I don't know if you have any other comments.
Yeah, I agree. We found that it has been a really useful resource to drive innovation. Sometimes those closest to the issue have the best solutions, and I think that when you can get involved and have treated as a contact sport up and close, you can develop different solutions, because you don't see it from the ivory tower perspective or a book perspective. You get to experience it, and when you may go in with certain assumptions, and when you are on the ground and can have that immersive experience, you can walk away with just different insights that can help drive that innovation and just different solutions.
Thank you. I have questions for each of you, but let me mention to our audience, feel free to send in questions and we will try to address at least a couple of them. So thank you both for your thoughts so far. And let me ask, maybe starting with Mary, for our listeners who work at companies, what's the case to companies to encourage and support the involvement of employees on nonprofit boards?
Alice, I think this is it's a topic of great discussion at Dow, and we've actually, we have a very strong program that we do for engaging our employees for impact as part of our sustainability goals. This is one of our goals. And how do we engage our employees, not just by going out and volunteering, but bringing their knowledge, bringing their skills to really advance other areas, especially for nonprofits. You mentioned, sustainable development goals. I mean, there are many of those that match up with the needs of nonprofits, in our area. So we have had, I think, an unbelievably supportive culture at Dow to get engaged in volunteering in nonprofit service. In fact, last week, I was engaged in a cleanup with the Saginaw Bay Land Conservancy, where we take our employees out and we help pick up trash in areas where trash shouldn't be. So I think that's really important, and we've found significant value from that. And it's just about how do you take an employee's passion and really allow them to express that passion through their work. As Tracy mentioned, the innovations that we can come up with in our work, but also then to be able to contribute along with the company. I think that what we also find is that we learn a lot of different things in nonprofit service, and you and I have talked about this. It's a little bit different than working at a Fortune 50 company. I think that all the people that I've known that have served on boards have experienced something that they can bring back to work, whether it's that they've helped advance that organization strategically from what they brought from their workplace, or that they brought an innovation that helps advance that organization, or they have simply connected people in that organization with others to help them advance. So I think that there are great things that can happen, and people, I think, also enjoy that break, that their company supports the idea of them being engaged in their communities. So I think it's very positive. And you learn, and you learn and learn and learn. And I think that's what really helps make a difference.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry about the dinging. Everything's muted on my end when I'm not speaking, so not sure, but it alerts us all. Pay attention. So apologies for that to our viewers and listeners. Tracy, to you, please, for people in the audience from companies who recognize the value of nonprofit board service, what's the case to companies that this is something that needs to be supported, promoted, encouraged?
I think with any important initiative at a company, it always starts at the top, and you hear that, and that is also true with board service. And so for Target, our CEO, Brian Cornell, has done a phenomenal way of not only promoting board service through his own service, but also encouraging others to get involved and talking openly to all of our team members about why it is important not only to grow as individual team members, but also to give back to communities. The other aspect that I would highlight is that it is so important to connect it to a strategic value of the company. Target used to have board service as a separate program or initiative many years ago. Then we integrated it in with HR because HR had a strategic goal to provide meaningful career experiences to their team members. We integrated our board efforts in with their strategic goals to offer up this extremely valuable tool. We all know that if you have a leader that needs more experience with ambiguous situation, finding the right board experience for them that is really messy, really ambiguous, can be a great way to help them develop. And so I think that by integrating it in with a strategic value of the company versus having it as a siloed standalone. The other aspect that has been really helpful to us is just metrics. Last year, when we participated in the Better World Leadership Study, it was a great way for us to understand baseline, where we were with our team members, and so we can take our program to the next level and to build on that. And so we're really looking forward to taking those metrics that we received last year and strategically making sure that we are advancing this program and not only helping Target give back to our communities, but also help HR with the goal of providing meaningful career experiences for our team.
There's no dinging. There we go. Thank you, Tracy, for tying it in with the company goals, which is really critical, obviously. If we're going to encourage companies to do this, how does it tie in with innovation and talent development and retention and sustainability? If there are any questions, I don't know that I see any questions coming in. We can open for questions. Here we go. We do have one. Can you share any suggestions as to how nonprofits can connect to companies to get them engaged if there's no existing relationship? To Tracy or Mary?
Yeah, I will say, Alice, we have a really strong, in our communities, we have strong engagement with like the United Way. We'll just use the United Way, for example. I think that's quite a familiar organization with many of us. We actually had at one time, folks from United Way that would work in our organizations that would help us connect. So we worked through our public affairs organizations. But I also think back to Tracy's comment about goals and metrics. I think that as we became more concrete in the goals that we wanted, for engagement externally to Dow, we would start to seek out even more. I think that there's an opportunity both ways. Someone just has to really kind of, make that connection either through, kind of an established part of your organization, or as Tracy pointed out, when you formalize a goal as a company, we found that, we have found more opportunities to engage others.
That's right.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. We have found a couple of ways. One, if it is an active part of Target strategy, then we will proactively reach out to nonprofits and to place leaders on those boards. But we also have found that we benefited from encouraging team members to self-place themselves on boards. And so we have an active site where we encourage nonprofits, if they have an opportunity, to list those opportunities, and then we promote those to our team members so they can get involved.
Yeah, and Tracy, we have a very similar system. We also keep track of all of our volunteer hours, and we match. We have like a matching system. If you have a skill set or something that you're interested in sharing, then we can match you with organizations who are looking for someone with that skill set.
Thank you. Great answers. And I would encourage nonprofits. We're helping both companies, Target and Dow, and several others, to scale their nonprofit board programs to train and match many more people as companies value it. And I know at Target, whatever the employee's passion is, that's encouraged. And some companies have specific areas, education, workforce development, et cetera, but those usually encompass a lot of nonprofits. I would say to nonprofits, it's really important to think about exactly what you're looking for, what skills, what experience, what expertise, so it helps to be clear. We have another question. How do you prepare your employees so that they can be great contributors as well as reflect and learn from their experiences?
The question is about how do we prepare our employees to be excellent contributors. I think we've done that in a variety of ways. When I first started board service, the network maybe wasn't as large as it is now, and so I think we have a tremendous network of people that can share experiences. And I know I get calls on a fairly regular basis about, hey, I'm dealing with this particular issue on a nonprofit board. Can I help you with that? And I think, again, back to Tracy, not to go back to this, but the idea that we have a goal, and it's very clear and open with us that this is something we want to accomplish. We find that naturally happens. So I think that we've had also some opportunities for different training. Maybe we take some of our training, take it to boards, or take it out to outside. I know in the diversity and inclusion space we've had some very good luck with that. But I think it just really kind of depends on what you need, and then how do you seek out that knowledge to help with your nonprofit board service.
I agree. We've also found that the most critical piece is the match piece. And so the team members really know what they're getting into with a particular board based upon what the nonprofit is looking for. We've also put a lot of time and effort into really practical resources for our team. If you are a newer board member, we try to give you more detailed background and experience in terms of how to be a strategic board member, versus if you are more of a seasoned leader, then we have a different resource for that leader as a reminder on here's great governance, here are some strategic questions that you should ask. And so we've had a segmented approach to make sure that we're meeting our team where they are, so they can contribute at the highest level to whatever board they might be on.
Thank you for great questions, and thank you so much to Mary and Tracy. If you each would like to make a final comment, let me open that up to you.
Yeah, Alice, I would say, I encourage you all, whether you work for a company or for a nonprofit, government, is that Tracy and I both shared that goals are important. So I think if you set a goal, it's a little easier to kind of want to go and accomplish that goal. So I would strongly encourage you to set goals, and I would strongly encourage you to take a look at Alice's research, read her book, to really see the value that nonprofit board service, and really on any level, brings to the to the advancement, both personally and professionally, of those in your organization.
Thank you, Mary. Tracy?
Agree with what Mary stated, and I think that with any initiative, it is important to measure what matters and to use the metrics that are available through Alice's resources to help close the key gaps that you might have in your program in order to be able to take it to the next level. But measurement really matters, and an active plan to close those gaps to ensure that you're getting the most value out of your program.
Fantastic. Both of you mentioned the studies and that they're online. They're available online at no cost at betterworldleadership.com, and additional new companies are welcome to participate in the study, speaking of measurement, and also for us to help you scale. So with that, and on time, I turn it back to Glenn, and thank you to our listeners and to our partners, and especially to Mary and Tracy.
Thanks, Alice.
Yep. And thank you, Alice, and I'll add my thanks to Mary and Tracy for your really thoughtful and helpful comments and presentations. I will also join Alice in encouraging all of you to check out the studies that Alice's team has put together at WEC. We were proud to support those studies as well, and we think they're terrific. Okay, for our second panel, we're going to shift to our second team, and I'll have the pleasure of introducing Gavin Cepelak with Pyxera Global, a fabulous partner at WEC, and his panelists, whom he will introduce from 3M and FedEx, two other great companies. So Gavin, over to you.
Great, thanks, Glenn. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alice, Mary, Tracy. I think that's coming from working at a nonprofit for 10 years. It's always great to hear and encourage leaders and private sector leaders to engage with the nonprofit board. So it's great to see on the attendee list some familiar names and some new names and some all around the world. So good morning and good evening to some of our colleagues who might be in Japan listening today. So my name is Gavin Cepelak. I'm at Pyxera Global. We're an organization based in Washington, D.C. that we operate globally. What we do is we work with the best of government, business, and nonprofits to really strive and solve global challenges or solvable problems. I lead our pro bono practice area, and one of those tools to help solve those global challenges or solvable problems is through Go Pro Bono, using the best and brightest at corporations, their employees, to put them in nonprofit organizations or socially driven organizations to help build their capacity and move the needle on, whether it's specific SDGs and so on. It's also a great tool to engage employees in the overall corporate strategy, their CSR initiatives, but also build future leaders, taking them out of their comfort zone. So I'm glad to hear the linkages between board service and participating in some of the unknowns and getting out of your comfort zone. The same thing through these global pro bono programs where employees are taking their skill sets, they're getting engaged with the community and working in environments or sectors or countries that they're not familiar with, and using those skill sets and having an experiential learning experience. So today on the line, we have Matt Luke from 3M and Heather Fox from FedEx. I'm going to jump into one or two questions, have them introduce themselves and answer those questions at the same time. But before I do so, I just want to remind some of our listeners that if you're interested in Pyxera Global or learning more about Go Pro Bono and how corporations use it as a corporate strategy tool or a leadership development tool, you can visit and download Pyxera Global's Go Pro Bono State of the Practice report, which is on our website for downloading. And then also there's an opportunity for, just like board service or opportunities there, we have an opportunity now in partnership with SAP where company employees can join a multi-company program called Corporate Champions for Education. That's also on our website as well. So Matt, are you on the line, Matt? Can you hear me?
I am. Can you hear me, Gavin?
Yes, I can hear you, Matt. Thanks for having us. Matt actually and I have worked together for a number of years, so always excited to talk about the progression and the development of the program. But Matt, I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you introduce yourself, but also start talking about a little bit about your company's Go Pro Bono program and how it fits into your leadership development model?
Sure. Thanks, Gavin. So my name is Matt Luke. I work with the 3M Leadership Development Team, and we've had a partnership with Pyxera Global for about the past 5 years. During that time, we kicked off a program for our top leaders in the company. It's a 12-month journey. It's immersive. They do 360s. They get assigned a coach. They get together and have a face-to-face classroom experience. But then importantly, we send them out on these 2-week assignments to partner with nonprofits and deliver some value back to them, whether that's increasing revenues, saving costs, or even just raising awareness through marketing and communications and some of the things they do. What's incredibly valuable for us is this is an opportunity to develop our top leaders, give them this really experiential, immersive journey to go through. And through it, it forces them to step outside their comfort zone. Now, this might be anything from a participant that we sent to India, and when he showed up, he opened his suitcase, and lo and behold, almost half of his suitcase was full of granola bars. And so in his case, his comfort zone was understanding it was okay to eat some of the food in India. Not all of it was going to make him sick, but that's just one small way it showed up. The other opportunities were getting into some of the slums in Mumbai, and some people were really hesitant to do this. The slums that we visited are near one of the largest dumps in the world. It's a DNR dump that's located in Mumbai. They've had a lot of challenges with this dump, fires that start, poor air quality, but also the conditions of the people working on the dump. It's pretty unsafe. Average lifespan is somewhere between about 30 and 40 years. And so to get into the slums for people, took them outside of their comfort zone to actually get in there, meet some of the people. It started right at the doorway to one of the homes where people had to take off their very expensive shoes and leave them at the door and trust that they would be there when they got back, which fortunately it worked out for everybody. They learned out that the folks living there have a really good sense of community. They take care of each other, not just in terms of their shoes that got left outside, but they got to ask them, hey, if you don't have enough money for food, what do you do? And they shared with them, well, we help each other out. So if I don't get all of the resources I need working today, I know I can rely on my neighbors, and they know they can rely on me, which was a huge, huge insight for people just to understand, okay, I see. We've got a community here. These are real people. They have real cares and concerns. They got to ask them about one dream that they have for their kids. And consistently, with all the people we talked to, they said they just want to make sure that their kids had a better life than they did. So again, we're introducing these colliding perspectives of just understanding, hey, this is a real functioning community. It's healthy. There's some happiness in there. Yet they have some really real challenges. And so being able to help them find places to work, safe places to work, to provide opportunities so they can better themselves in education and find better jobs and better lives, ways that they could help out in terms of managing the waste and the air pollution. All of these things are going to have a huge impact for our leaders. And so these are some of the ways that it shows up for our leaders on the ground. Now, importantly, when they get back to work, we need them to apply some of these insights. And so I'll give you an example. We worked with a food shelf in Shanghai. And one of the main goals with this food shelf, like any food shelf you might have worked with, is to make sure that you've got enough incoming food on a regular basis so that you can provide it to people who need it pretty consistently. And so we started with one of the best examples of this. There was a mystery donor who dropped off giant bags of food every month. And the team said, hey, we want more of that. How do we get that? And so they started brainstorming. They said, okay, how do they get this? One, maybe they're getting it through donations from churches or schools. If you guess that, that'd be a good guess, but not right. Two, they said maybe it's fallen off the back of a truck, or maybe there's some manufacturer has excess supply. That would be another good guess, but not the case. Maybe they said it's expired, so it's coming from grocery stores, or it's getting close to expiration. Again, a really good guess, but not exactly. What was happening in this discussion is people were really having their perceptions challenged and their idea about how can we get to something truly innovative. As it turns out, the food was coming from an amusement park. And when people heard that, they said, okay, that's kind of interesting. How exactly are they getting donations from food from an amusement park every month? Well, it turns out the amusement park was confiscating it at the gate every month. And it took a really clever employee to say, hey, I know they can't bring outside food in, but instead of maybe throwing this away, what if we could find a way just to gather it up? And so this really creative employee got it together, got his colleagues on board, and they started making this donation on a monthly basis to the food shelf. The purpose of this is trying to get our people to think a little bit in terms of more divergent thinking. And it raised this question to them, which said, what's the excess opportunity that we have where we work at 3M? And so employees came back to work with that mindset. I did too. And as I lead leadership development programs for 3M, I noticed my excess capacity was I always have a couple of extra seats in the room. And so I worked with our foundation that partners with the local public schools, and I said, hey, would they happen to have any teachers, administration, students, PTA members who would love to come do some leadership development as part of 3M? And lo and behold, they said, hey, we'd love that opportunity. And so over the last couple of years now, we've had administrators and principals and teachers coming in and being part of our 3M leadership development programs in St. Paul. So just one of the tangible ways that we're taking those experiences on the ground in the communities, working with nonprofits, and figuring out how to bring that innovation back into 3M. I hope that's a good overview, Gavin, and just a little bit of context for people in terms of what we've developed. And I'll turn it back over to you. And Gavin, I think we might have you on mute.
Yeah, I am off mute now. I appreciate that overview, and I think the interesting part of the catalyst, and you may have mentioned it, it's top leaders at 3M. Some of them, I think you were mentioning the Mumbai visit, they were, a step down or pretty close to the CEO and the C-suite level. So very highly talented individuals, but really taking them out of their comfort zone. And over the year, through their leadership development program at 3M, they're learning, techniques. They're in classroom settings, which Matt mentioned. You're bringing in other outside entities, but then they're also taking those skill sets and some of those lessons learned and putting them in that unfamiliar environment and not that perfect formula or that perfect situation. So they're experimenting a little bit on how to utilize these skill sets and these thoughts and their listening skills and their leadership traits in different environments, very different teams, really. So great, interesting program there. So I want to pass it over to Heather Fox from FedEx, another great example of a leadership program. They have various programs, been involved with both the GLC and the DRIVE programs, but I'm going to hand over to Heather to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her experience also as a participant of one of these programs, which is really great and interesting, and talk about the FedEx Drives program a little bit more and how that relates to building key leadership development skills for future talent.
Great. Thank you, Gavin, for having me. I'm Heather Fox. I'm the manager of learning and development. We are located in Memphis, Tennessee, is where our world headquarters are. And my team is responsible for leadership development for our executives as well as high potential employees. So Gavin was mentioning a program called GLC, which we call Global Leadership Core, and it's a 4-month program that's a nomination-based program. So we take 15 individuals in the spring and 15 individuals in the fall, and over this 4-month program, they go for 30 days in an emerging market to work for an NGO. And so I just took over responsibility of the program 2 months ago, but I actually was a participant 2 years ago where, I've been with the company about 18 years. I've been a manager for maybe 2, and this opportunity came to go to another country with 14 of my other FedEx team members that I'd never met before. And of course, I ran home and said, I have to do this. And my husband said, of course you do. Just giving back to the community is a big commitment at FedEx. And so I was honored to be selected. So we pack up and we land in Warsaw, Poland. And day one, PEXERA Global took great care of us to align us with the right NGOs that aligned with our corporate social responsibility pillars. I was placed with 2 guys from ops and an attorney from ground, and we were sent into a NGO to help launch an application to help improve seniors' memory. So completely out of all of our comfort zones. I was originally in marketing and then went into HR and L&D. So with anything at FedEx, all of the teams met and we looked at the statement of work, and we just started, applying some quality principles to help these NGOs. So within a month's time, all 15 of us that were divided into separate teams. We were able to provide significant contributions to each of these NGOs. One was the Warsaw Food Bank, and we were actually able to launch this application that improved seniors' memory through, for individuals who had no experience. So for me personally, I'm a pretty outgoing person, but this was something way out of my comfort zone. From a leadership perspective, it helped, FedEx is a very global company, 425 employees, all separate operating companies. So to have those individuals who do have very diverse jobs and experiences come together to support a nonprofit with the partnership of PEXERA, it was a life-changing experience. We come back, we do a readout to our executives, and then we continue to mentor and help others through local community partnerships. So that's one program, the GLC, and then Gavin mentioned another one, which we call Excel Drive. So this is a 6-month program. It is for managing directors who aspire to be vice presidents. We take only about 20 a year because it's very intensive, but it's broken out into modules, and one of those modules is global perspective. And so again, we partner with PEXERA for that team to go for 2 weeks and work with an NGO. And the way it works is the Drive team goes to that one NGO, stays there for 2 weeks, really sets the foundation, and then the global leadership core team will come in behind them a few months later and finish out the work that they started. So it's a great partnership between those high potential directors that lay the foundation, and then those high potential managers come in and really, really drive home the work for those NGOs.
Great, thank you, Heather. Very, very good examples there. Before I jump into the next question, I just want to remind the audience that if you have any questions, feel free to send those through. Towards the end of our time, we'll look to answer at least 1 or 2 of those. So Heather, sticking with you at the moment, and Matt will come back to you. Can you give us a snapshot of how your program has evolved over the past years, maybe from your experience or in general from the whole portfolio lifespan?
Sure. So GLC has been around. We've partnered with Pixera for 8 years, and we've been to 11 countries. And so it's probably maybe almost 300 community service hours per person that we are giving back. So that program has evolved to make sure that we're working closely with our FedEx Cares team, which is our global corporate social responsibility team, to make sure that we're picking the right markets, the emerging markets that we're sending our team members into. We want to make sure that both from a company perspective, that those individuals, the team members in those other emerging markets, that we're working closely with them to help expand that global market. We are looking at, right now we only have 30 participants for GLC. We are looking to expand that program to more participants, and then maybe even at a director level. So we always want to be able to grow and scale to keep up with the business demands and our growing company. And then for the Drive program, we've really worked closely with different vendors to make sure that as our business needs change, that we're bringing in the most relevant content. So this past year, we did a complete refresh where we brought in more simulations, more content on innovation, really more talent management sort of practices and philosophies that as people advance, they're very much focused on the business goals, and unfortunately, sometimes the talent management piece can be lower on the priority. So those are some ways that we're continually trying to either grow and scale by partnering with our FedEx Cares team to make sure that we're aligned, as well as refreshing the content to make it very relevant for our team members.
Great, thank you, Heather. I think one point that I like to hear, and I think we've seen it in the Go for Bono State of the Practice, is aligning with the company's core strategy, right? And giving those employees who are participating in Go for Bono program and practicing their leadership skills, giving them that experience in a country where there's future growth, and understanding the challenges in the communities on the ground and bringing back that different perspective, right? So changing their mindset a little bit. So making that linkages is really important, and really glad to hear that. Matt, over the number of years, I think we've seen a lot of changes. What are some highlights that the program have you seen has evolved over the coming year? I know there's been some structural shifts and program expansions and so on, but I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, the big one is we started off with our hypos at the top of the company. So they were vice presidents, directors. And the way to get in was only if they were nominated. And so one of the big changes is we started up a second program for all employees in the company. This is one where they could nominate themselves, and then through a selection process, they would go on an experience very similar to what our top leaders were going through. Again, we'd put them on the ground for 2 weeks. We'd match them up with a nonprofit partner. And one of the best things was because a lot of the leaders who had been through our programs also sat on the board for our foundation, they were very quick to be supportive of opening this up to more employees and making sure that anybody in the company could get access to this type of experience. Not only that, they were able to get behind it with their funding, and so we've been able to launch a second program that opens it up to a lot more people at 3M. The other way it started to evolve is quickly and early on, we realized people were having these great experiences on the ground, right? Getting into to see this dump in Mumbai, getting into working with this food shelf in China. But there was one important element that was really missing, and it was this elevated sense making. This idea of they had to figure out, okay, I just went through this amazing experience. It stretched me. I was uncomfortable at times. But what do I do with this? And so we've started to embed coaches on the projects with the teams on the ground. And so whether it's on a daily basis or a couple every other day, they get together with this coach and they have a discussion about, all right, what's going well? What would I like to go better? What are the key learnings for today? And how am I going to apply this back on the job? That's a general form of those discussions. So by the end of it, they're not just felt in this feeling of, wow, that was really amazing, or, ooh, that was really uncomfortable. But they've also got this sense of, I've got an action plan and a set of next steps I can take that'll help make this real and practical, and I can apply it back on the job. So hope that's helpful, but just a couple of ways that we've been able to evolve both the program itself and the experience for developing our leaders.
Thanks, Matt. I think those are two great examples. One of the things we tend to hear is, what do I do now after this experience? I'm I've learned this, I've gained that, and I think the coaching is really good. And one thing I learned through RIM Catalyst is, we've started to hone the term called heat experiences too, right? And I think that has become more intentional across a number of our programs, whether we've actually say heat experiences or not. But that's that experiential learning and taking them out of their comfort zone. And heat experiences could be the 110 Mumbai weather and burning fires next to you, or it could just be a different understanding of how a school or education is run in a rural community in Latin America, right? So I think that's something from in general, not just 3M, but a lot of the programs being more intentional about those experiential heat experiences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think just to add on to that, one of the key components we found is it's important to work with the nonprofits very closely. We got to figure out how to bring value to them. That's really one of the big goals of this program as well. But we also need to find a way to get the people connected to the beneficiaries of that nonprofit, and that's oftentimes where we'll find the heat experience or opportunity.
Great. So I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions for our two panelists, Heather and Matt, or even if Mary and Tracy, if you have questions as well, we can open it up internally, have a broader conversation. But I'm going to give it a. Go ahead.
We've worked with you also at Dow, and I have not had the opportunity to go on one of these experiences that Heather and Matt, you both have, but those that I've spoken with have said it's been literally a game changer for them, both personally and professionally. I have a very good colleague who is in Africa currently and working, on this idea of poverty in plastics together, and it's just truly amazing after his experience with what you do, what that's done for him in terms of how he approaches his professional career. So well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I think Mary. Hopefully you'll get an opportunity to get you on one of these programs yet yourself.
Yeah, but we got to find the time. That's the big thing.
I'll tell you, it is a challenge for our participants. That's where we challenge them as well. Look for opportunities to be able to delegate, and help develop those other leaders, help them step into their shoes for a couple of weeks, but also try to get the support of management. And you're absolutely right. This is a challenge, and it's very real, and one that we're going to continue to make a push for as we roll these programs out and try to articulate what is the value when you are sacrificing so much time and energy. What can we show as the result or the return?
That's a really good point, because I was a mom of two, and my children were pretty young, and it was one of those things that it was really difficult decision to take this opportunity to be away from my family for 4 weeks. But then I thought about what a great opportunity I was giving one of my team members to be an acting manager while I was out of the country for a month. It was an incredible, rewarding experience for me. But then now my daughter will say, well, Mom, when you were in Warsaw, and, I want her to see that, a working mom can also do it all as well. So it has lots of benefits from, in addition to just not, supporting a local nonprofit, but your own personal benefit as well.
Great. I think I have one more minute. I'll close and hand it back to Glenn. But Heather, Matt, thank you very much. I think you wrapped it up very nicely there with your own experiences. And I think these types of programs, Go Pro Bono programs, being used as leadership development programs, they're a catalyst to engage staff, and I think that's a natural flow into participating in board service. What we see a lot of times, people come back and say, what do I do now? How do I engage in my local community? How can I engage with nonprofits? So whether that's through traditional volunteering or hands-on volunteering or skills-based volunteering, with that addition of acting as a board service there. But it's great to, I think what we've seen and heard is taking those lessons in those classrooms and having those experiential learning experiences and those heat experiences, and having that bandwidth to think a little bit outside the box and being innovative. And learning from others really creates valuable and future globally competent leaders. in a lot of our private sector clients. So I'm going to pause there and hand it back to Glenn for any final comments or if anyone else has any questions. But I have not seen any questions in the chat box.
Great. Well, thank you, Gavin, and Heather and Matt. Thanks so much for those really passionate contributions. And I can feel the enthusiasm that you and your colleagues gain from your service just coming through your comments today. I did want to close with one reflection of my own. And I guess I'll do this for anybody out there listening who still isn't convinced, doesn't see the value. I just wanted to close with one sort of reflection on that. We've absolutely heard how nonprofit service, excuse me, can help the employee and the rising leader to become a better person, a better listener, more empathetic, more inclusive, and all around a better contributor to their company. What I've also seen in my own experience is that service, that sort of mixing between for-profit and nonprofit people, actually creates very tangible business opportunities for companies. And I'll tell that story through an experience I had with Mary. I know Mary best among everyone on the screen today because she has been a volunteer leader in one of the organizations I used to work for, the Nature Conservancy. And her company, Dow, is a member of the World Environment Center, where I'm working now. So Mary and I have worked together for many years. And because Mary and her former colleague, Neil Hawkins at Dow, both had served on boards at the Nature Conservancy, we had developed a really strong bond of trust. And Dow, Mary, and Neil turned around and asked TNC for help in making their business stronger. So they saw that there was business opportunity in the field of nature conservation, and they asked us to help them figure that out. And in a partnership that began back in 2011, we're actually on track to, Nature Conservancy is on track to help Dow create $1 billion in value to the company by figuring out how they can apply their business to nature conservation. And you can ask Mary more about what that means, but I just wanted to cite that as a very specific example of how executives getting outside their comfort zone, serving nonprofits can actually help them bring back ideas that can create real business opportunity. And I know from my other experiences with Target and FedEx and 3M that all of your companies, all the members of WEC, many other companies out there, see that there's business opportunity in addressing the world's sustainability challenges, whether it's clean water or clean air or food security or health. There's business to be done, there are needs to be met, and getting outside your comfort zone, learning from the nonprofit organizations that exist to solve those problems can help you capture that business and make a bigger difference in the world. So with that, I'll move to close. I hope this has stimulated some ideas and some questions in everyone's minds. If you haven't been able to ask a question or one occurs to you as you're mulling over this program, you're going to get a follow-up email if you registered for this event, and that'll include links to the recording, but we'll also include email addresses for Alice and Gavin and myself. So please send us any questions you have by email, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered by our fabulous panelists here today. I want to thank everyone you see on the screen and have heard on the phone, Alice and Gavin, Mary, Tracy, Matt, and Heather. Thank you so much for your time and bringing us your wisdom. I also want to thank some individuals who aren't on the screen, but without whose hard work none of us would be on the screen. So I want to thank Caitlin McCarthy at Environmental Law Institute. I want to thank Morgan Singer at Pixera Global, and I want to thank Smitha Kanduri at the World Environment Center for taking the lead in organizing this event. And lastly, I just want to issue a challenge to everybody on the call today. So you heard from many people a common refrain: the value of this is getting outside your comfort zone. So I want to challenge all of us. Let's get outside our comfort zone. And this week, if you're a nonprofit, take a step to contact a company that you think could bring value to your nonprofit. Take a step to contact them and try to engage one of their executives as a board member or as a volunteer. If you're a company, take a step this week to think about how you can get involved with a nonprofit that serves your personal values and hopefully also your corporate mission, ideally both. Take a step to figure out how you can get involved with that organization. And I'm confident that all of your organizations will be stronger because of those steps that you take. So with that, thanks everybody for joining, and we'll look forward to being in touch.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Glenn.
Hey, thanks so much.
All right, thanks, everybody. Mary, I hope that was okay that I shared our story.
Oh, no, that was great. Thanks. It was good to see you.
Yeah, you